Welcome to Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William, featuring award-winning financial advisor and former host of the Sunday Money Show, News Talk 1010, Paul Baraka, and his associate advisor, William Baraka. Creating and keeping wealth does not need to be complicated. Paul and William will cut through confusing and contradictory financial advice to give you the real facts to help you invest better and enjoy a worry-free retirement. The views and opinions expressed in this video may not necessarily reflect those of IPC Securities Corporation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.
Hey, Paul and everyone listening. This is Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William. This is the 20th episode now. Thanks to everyone for listening. Kind of a milestone, I guess, for us. Today, Paul, we're going to be talking about kind of listening to the media, listening to predictions, and how valuable or not valuable that is for people's long-term financial well-being.
I read a book a number of years ago, Will, and I did a blog on it a number of years ago. It's called Why Expert Predictions Fail and Why We Believe Them Anyways. And I've heard this, again, 32 years in the business. Client comes in. Oh, Paul, where do you think the markets are going? Oh, I heard on BNN or CBC or wherever there's going to be a recession. Markets are overpriced. Markets are underpriced, whatever. And of course, if you look at the statistics, if you look at those pundits and their track record, they're not quite what you might think.
No, I mean, big picture, most of what you read or watch on TV, it's pointless. It will not help you make better decisions or help you understand the world better. I mean, a big reason why, particularly now, is with how news has changed and with the internet and everything, it's become easier and cheaper to produce. But with that, the quality of it has drastically decreased. And I think people, you mentioned listening to people on BNN and all that sort of things, rarely do we stop and ask ourselves with the media we're consuming, like, is this good for me? Is this dense with detailed information? Is this important to me? Or is the person I'm listening to well informed on the issue, or are they just spewing whatever they feel?
You know, I did some reading a while ago, and it was from William Cohen, who wrote a profile of Jim Cramer in The Spectator. Now, Cramer, what's the name of his program? Money Squawks or whatever it is, doesn't matter. And Cramer's been on for a long time, and a lot of people, say, hey, I follow this guy. And this fellow rated his performance on Cramer's recommendations between 2017 and 2021. And in that time period, he made 12,564 individual stock calls. And they were compared to the performance of the S&P 500. And get this, you're not going to believe this. According to Mr. Cohen, his analysis was that Cramer's picks were on whole about 6 to 7% return below the index, 67% below the index, not what I would call a stellar performance. But yet lots of people follow this fellow.
That's right. I mean, he's become such a punchline. There's actually now an exchange traded fund, which it's called the Inverse Cramer ETF.
I heard about that.
And it basically, because, like you said, it's become kind of a punchline about how basically everything Jim Cramer says, the opposite happens. So this ETF form was basically does the opposite of whatever Cramer says to do on TV. And it's done pretty well, actually, since it came out. Also funny, Paul, I don't mean to dunk on Cramer so much, but I don't know if you saw somewhat funny. Last month, Jim Cramer said on TV, he liked Silicon Valley Bank when it was trading at $320 a share.
I didn't hear that.
Last month he was saying on his TV show he should go out and buy SVB Bank at $320, and now we all know what's happened to it since then.
That's not very good. By the way, a lot of people too, you hear people, shills, you might call them, but a lot of people say they look at, well, economists, they spend all day, that's their profession, to follow the money, to know what's happening in the world financially. But listen to this, early in 2008, 54 economists met at the White House with then President Bush, and they confidently predicted. Now, by 2008, that's 6 months before the great financial crisis, they confidently suggested things are going to be slow and steady growth, and the economy wouldn't sink into a recession. So that is about 6 months before the greatest money downturn since the Great Depression. I mean, Buffett talks about economists too. He says, there's probably, according to Buffett, maybe 150,000 economists in the US. And I may have that number wrong. And according to him, he says, as far as he knows, none of them are really wealthy. And those are the people you'd think would be exceedingly wealthy. He says, none of them are.
I mean, I think what people, going back to what you said at the top of the show, Paul, we often hear from people who come in and say, oh, I heard this person say this, or I read this in the newspaper. You can't take all that at face value. You have to look back and say, oh, does this person actually have a good track record in things they've said in the past? And as we've seen, in most cases, the answer is no. But you also need to realize that a lot of what these people are doing, whether it's pundits like Kramer on TV, writers in the newspaper, it's not real information. What they're doing is entertainment. They're not doing good information. They're just entertainers. Again, to use Jim Kramer as an example, or anyone else who talks about stocks on TV, in any given year, they'll talk about probably thousands of stocks. They're on every day for hours on end, just talking about stocks. These people, they have the same amount of time in the day as we do. They don't have the time to do in-depth research on thousands of companies. It's humanly impossible. So they're just talking off the top of their heads for the most part. And so again, just take it as entertainment. It can be entertaining to listen to, but don't make your important financial decisions based upon what those people are saying.
There's a study done. Can I just got to say something there. There's a study done by Dr. Philip Tetlock of UCLA, and they went through all the predictions from very famous people. And first thing, they find that often people will quote, well, this person predicted this accurately, whatever that was. But what doesn't happen is they don't tell you about the 19 other predictions the same person made that were literally didn't work out at all. And according to him, he says the more famous the person is, the bolder their predictions are and the less accurate they are. The less accurate, the bolder the prediction. Because, hey, that makes headlines and that's what sells media time, let's face it.
Well, yeah, another thing, Paul, is these people writing, whether they're writing articles or talking on TV and they're telling you, oh, you should do this. Like, for example, a headline you'll often see in the newspaper or on an internet site is 10 stocks you need to own. Well, how do they know what you should own? These people don't know anything about you. They don't know your financial situation. They don't know what your financial goals are. How do they know what you should own?
Now, you did some research on that, and you came up with a list, I think, made about 22 years ago.
Well, this is just another example. I'll share my screen here for the benefit of people on YouTube.
And just describe for the people not on YouTube. I think it was Forbes. Was it Forbes magazine? Is that right?
No. So here it is. This is an article from Fortune magazine in 2000, and it says 10 golden companies to own in the next decade to come. And they include companies like Enron, Nokia, Nortel, basically not good performing companies. Out of the 10 on this list, the only one that made any money in the next 12 years was a company called Genentech, which was bought out. All of the other ones lost money, and of course Enron went straight to zero. And this is
As
from,
did
again,
Nortel.
Fortune
Don't forget
magazine.
about Nortel.
Oh, Nortel too. I missed that one too. How did I miss that? So yeah, I mean, this is again from Fortune magazine, very reputable magazine that a lot of people read. So again, just don't take anything you read or hear on TV in the newspaper has face value. Do your own independent research and realize that again, these people don't know anything about you, your risk tolerance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So again, just to summarize things up, let me just get there we are. Summarize things now. Again, if you're looking for advice, the media is there to do one thing, and that's to entertain and create headlines and to sell media time. And that's all fine. It's good. Nothing wrong with it, except don't listen to it if you're going to make financial decisions.
Exactly. I think
Not
the
a good
moral
thing.
of all this, Paul, is focus on what you can control. You can't control as much
Bingo.
as humans. We'd love to be able to know when the next recession is going to come. We'd love to know the next big hot stock that's going to come. But we can't accurately predict that, and we can't control what happens all around the world around us. You can control your asset allocation. You can control your savings rates. So focus again on things that you can control.
And that's what we tell our clients. Focus on what matters to you and what you can control, because you just don't know. By the way, to avoid that, the simple ways of dealing with it is to have a plan and to automate things. Because when you automate your plan, all of a sudden, when stuff happens, as it always will, you just tend to stay on course. And by the way, this is proven statistically by a wide margin. So probably not a bad time to wrap things up, William, for this week. And as usual, if you like what you heard here, hey, rate us, and hopefully you say something nice, subscribe, and pass it on to any other interested parties. Our next podcast will be on something that I think is really interesting: the pros and cons of early retirement. And most people think, oh, I just want to retire early. But when you're in the business like I've been, you find a lot of people, it doesn't always work out that well. So we're going to talk about that on our next podcast. And by the way, of course, if you've heard things you like, if you're not totally comfortable with where you're headed financially and you'd like to talk to us, just send us an email at info@westendwealth.com, info@westendwealth.com, and say, hey, I'd like to have a chat with you. And oh, by the way, too, if you have topics that you'd like us to talk about on Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William, again, info@westendwealth.com, info@westendwealth.com. Say, hey, would you guys talk about this? Can't guarantee we will, but would appreciate your input.
This podcast was brought to you by West End Wealth Planning, an award-winning wealth planning practice catering to small and medium-sized business owners and to those looking to create a worry-free retirement for themselves and their families. To learn more, go to westendwealth.com. Don't forget to rate this podcast and subscribe to Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts.